Ethan sat alone at a corner table, his fingers tracing the rim of his half-empty coffee cup. Outside, rain tapped gently against the window, blurring the city lights into streaks of gold and red. His face was shadowed with exhaustion, disappointment heavy in his eyes. He had just lost another job interview, another failure, another sign that maybe, just maybe, life wasn't going to turn out the way he had dreamed. With a deep sigh, he glanced around the nearly empty cafe. Just another ordinary evening, or so he thought. Then, the door swung open. A gust of cold air rushed in, followed by a man wrapped in a long dark coat. Ethan barely paid attention at first, until the stranger stepped into the light. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. His heartbeat quickened, because the man standing at the entrance looked exactly like him. Not just a little. Not like a long-lost twin. No! This man had the same sharp jawline, the same deep-set eyes. But there was something different. His hair was streaked with silver. His face bore the weight of years, etched with lines of wisdom and experience. Ethan's hands gripped the table as the man walked toward him with purpose. Without a word, the stranger sat across from him, resting his hands on the table as if he had done this 1,000 times before. Then, in a calm, steady voice, he spoke the words that made Ethan's world stop spinning. "You have no idea what's coming next." His body tensed. His mind raced. Was this some kind of prank? A hallucination? A dream? He wanted to laugh, to dismiss it as ridiculous, but there was something about the man's expression, calm yet filled with a strange, knowing sadness, that made it impossible to ignore. The air in the cafe suddenly felt heavier. The distant hum of the espresso machine, the chatter of the barista, the clinking of coffee cups, it all faded into the background. Ethan swallowed hard, his voice barely a whisper. Who are you?" The older man leaned forward, eyes locking onto his younger self with an intensity that sent chills down Ethan's spine. "I am you," the man said, "and I don't have much time." Ethan let out a nervous chuckle, shaking his head. "Right, you're me. From the future." The old man didn't flinch. His gaze remained steady, unwavering. "Listen," Ethan said, leaning back in his chair. "This is a great prank. Really. But you've got the wrong guy." The older man sighed, rubbing his temples as if he had expected this reaction. "I don't have time to convince you, but I can prove it." Ethan folded his arms, his skepticism evident. "All right, let's hear it." The cafe seemed to shrink around them, the sounds of distant chatter and clinking cups fading into the background. The old man's voice was quiet but firm. "When you were 8, you broke Mom's favorite vase. You told her the cat knocked it over, but you hid the broken pieces in a shoebox under your bed for months." Ethan froze. His smirk disappeared. "No one knows that," he whispered. The man continued. "Your phone passcode, 062394. Your dad's birthday." Ethan's hands trembled. He had never told a soul. His mind raced for a logical explanation. Hacking? A really good guess? But then, the man spoke again, and the words sent a chill down Ethan's spine. "In 3 days, you'll cross Jefferson Street at exactly 9:47 p.m. A car will run the red light. You won't see it coming. You'll be inches from death." Ethan's breath caught in his throat. His fingers instinctively curled around his coffee cup, the warmth now feeling distant against his cold, clammy hands. This wasn't a joke. This wasn't a coincidence. "Why are you here?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The old man exhaled, his eyes filled with something Ethan couldn't quite place. Regret, urgency, maybe even fear. To change everything. The old man's voice was steady but heavy with sorrow. "Your life is heading toward a tragic end." Ethan's heart pounded. He wanted to believe this was some elaborate hoax, a cruel joke. But the man's expression, the way his hand shook slightly as he spoke, made it impossible to dismiss. "You will die alone, broke, and full of regret." Ethan's fingers curled into fists on the table. "That's ridiculous. I'm only 25. I have time. The old man shook his head. No, you don't. You are about to make 3 choices that will destroy your future. Ethan swallowed hard. What choices? The man exhaled, rubbing his hands together as if trying to summon the courage to say it out loud. The first, he began, is missing a golden opportunity that could change everything. Ethan frowned. What opportunity? In 2 days, you'll get a call from someone who believes in you. They'll offer you something that could change your life. But you'll ignore it. You'll be too afraid, too stubborn, and you won't even call back. A flash of memory struck Ethan. A text from an unknown number he had ignored just last week. A job offer? A connection? He hadn't even bothered to check. The second mistake, the old man continued, his voice thick with emotion, is betraying a close friend. Someone who trusts you completely. And because of one selfish decision, you will lose them forever. Ethan's breath caught. His mind immediately went to Jake, his childhood best friend. They hadn't spoken in months, not since that stupid argument over money. Had he already set this mistake in motion? And the third, the old man said, his eyes darkening, is a reckless financial decision. You will think it's a shortcut to success, but it will ruin you. You'll lose everything. Ethan's pulse raced. He had been considering taking out a massive loan for a risky business idea, something he wasn't even sure would work. His mind reeled as images flooded his brain, flashing like pieces of a nightmare he hadn't yet lived. A missed call from a number he didn't recognize. The weight of regret pressing on his chest. Jake's back turned as he walked away, hurt and disappointed. A dark, empty apartment. The walls bare, his bank account drained, his future self sitting alone in the silence. Ethan gritted his teeth, his voice breaking. Is there still time to fix it? The old man looked at him, eyes filled with something Ethan had never seen in himself before, desperation. Yes, he whispered, but only if you listen. Ethan's mind raced, his pulse pounding in his ears. The weight of everything his future self had told him was crushing. The old man leaned back, watching him carefully. If I'm here, that means you can still change everything. For the first time since this bizarre encounter began, Ethan felt something stir inside him. Hope. He had a second chance. He could change his fate. No more wasted opportunities. No more pushing away the people who cared about him. No more reckless, short-sighted decisions. He grabbed his phone and scrolled through his missed calls. There it was, the number he had ignored last week. With a deep breath, he pressed dial. Hello. A voice answered. Hey, this is Ethan. I think we need to talk. The old man smiled. Good. Ethan's hands trembled as he texted Jake. Hey, man. I messed up. Can we meet? Seconds later, the reply came. Yeah, let's talk. His heart pounded. It wasn't too late. He turned to his future self. What about you? The old man stood slowly, adjusting his coat. What about me? Are you going back to the future? The old man paused at the cafe door. He turned slightly, his lips curling into a knowing smile. The future is not written in stone, he said. I just gave you the pen, and with that, he was gone. Ethan sat there, staring at the door, his chest rising and falling with deep breaths. His future wasn't set. He had the power to change everything. And this time, he wouldn't waste it. Ethan stepped out of the cafe, the cool evening air brushing against his skin. The city around him felt different, brighter, more alive. Or maybe, for the first time in years, he was actually seeing it. His mind replayed everything that had just happened. Was it real? A hallucination? A dream? It didn't matter. What mattered was the message. His life wasn't set in stone. He still had time. A strange mix of emotions swirled inside him. Fear, excitement, relief. He had been given a second chance, and he wasn't going to waste it. As he took his first step forward, something caught his eye. Across the street, a massive billboard loomed above the buildings. its bright neon letters glowing in the night. Your future is what you make it. Ethan's breath hitched. His fingers tightened around his phone. Was this a coincidence? A sign? A slow, determined smile spread across his face. For the first time in years, he knew exactly what he had to do. No more regrets. No more waiting. The future was his to create. And this time, he would make it count.